and we're going to continue from there. Now we're going to look at education in Singapore, right? Education. Okay. You must know the two time periods. In the 1819 to 1867, this period is considered one time period. This period, Singapore was controlled by the EIC. What does EIC stand for? You learned this in the early part of this chapter. East India Company. Okay, it is a British trading company. Okay, they were controlling Singapore from 1819 until 1867. But if you remember, the EIC had a lot of problems. They didn't have enough money to develop Singapore. All right, they were losing interest in Singapore around middle of 40s, 1850s. They didn't want to really spend a lot of money on Singapore already because they were not making money. All right. You can go and study the early part of the chapter to understand why is it they were not making money, right? The EIC. Okay, so because of that, right, there was very little educational opportunities because the EIC didn't spend money to build schools, right? The EIC didn't, they didn't want to spend too much money, in developing Singapore, right? Anyway, the people in Singapore were focused on making money only, trading, and then after that going back to wherever they came from, whichever country they came from. Okay, so this was a situation in Singapore in the 1819 to 1867. There were some schools. It doesn't mean there were no schools. There were some schools. For example, there was a free primary school for Malay. They taught Malay. There was nothing for the Chinese, and there was a few schools for the Tamils. All right. And the schools were not controlled by the government. Right? Whoever was the principal of the school will just his job is to run their own curriculum. Right? The government will not interfere. Not like today. Today all schools are managed by MOE, Ministry of Education. Last time don't have such thing. Last time whichever school is by itself one. Right? Whatever the principal wants, it will do. All right. There were some schools also left created by Christian missionaries, right, and European traders, and some rich Chinese traders also would spend money to build schools, all right. But generally, this period not much educational opportunities for students or for children, all right. Most children remain at home, all right. They don't really go to school. They stay at home and help their parents. Right? As they get older, they start working. They start working early. Right? This was normal, common in those days. All right. And girls were not expected to go to school also. Right? In this period, girls are expected to just stay home. Right? Look after the household, help the mother look after the household and things like that. Eventually get married at a young age and things like that. Teenager around 15, 16 years old can get married already. Right? So the girls don't are not expected to work, not expected to go to school also. These were the olden days, olden times, right? So boys also generally not much schooling opportunity. So although they can go to school, but there's not much schools available in Singapore at that time. All right. So they end up working, helping their family, start work and do work and things like that. All right. Okay. But things will change. Things will change when Singapore becomes a oh wait, one more thing. Parents also did not see value in learning English. Right. They did not think that learning English is important. Right. So not many schools went for English classes. Not many students went for English lessons and all that. Okay. Right. There was a school that taught Chinese, right? And the school name is called Singapore Institution. Right? Today is known as Raffles Institution. This school, Singapore Institution, today is known as RI. Okay, RI. Right? They're the only school that taught Chinese at that time during the EIC period. Okay. Okay, let's answer some questions first, right? Before we move on. Okay, the answer is B, correct? Okay. All right. Then things will change when Singapore becomes a crown colony. Singapore becomes a crown colony in the year 1867. Okay, look at the time period again. Just now, EIC, I say one. EIC is from 1819 until 1867. So this year is the year when Singapore becomes a crown colony. Crown colony means what? It becomes a very important colony for the British. The British government in London directly takes charge of Singapore. Direct control. Okay? And this is important because that means now Singapore will receive more money because the British government in London has a lot of money, right? So the British government in London will send money to Singapore to develop their schools. All right. That's why becoming a crown colony is important for Singapore. British began to promote English language lessons in order to create a supply of English educated clerks. Fill in the blanks. Fill in the blanks. All right. Meaning that the British built schools and these schools taught English. All right. And any school that teaches English, the British will support by giving money. All right. Why was the British so keen on teaching English? So that students learn English, can speak English, and can work for the British next time. Okay, I repeat, so that the children can learn English, can speak English, and then can work for the British next time. That's why the British were keen on teaching English. And any school that taught English will receive money support from the British. Okay, so provided funding, the word here, keyword missing word here is funding. Okay, to Singapore, to schools in Singapore that taught English. Okay, next. Whichever schools that did not teach English, the British will not give money. Right, did not support schools that did not teach English. So that means schools that taught Chinese, some schools were set up to teach Chinese. Chinese, all the maths, English, science, maths, science, all that taught in Chinese. Okay, these were set up by rich traders, rich migrants who came from China, from Malaya. Some of them are very rich, so they helped by donating some money to build schools. All right, and one of these schools is known as Chinese High School. Chinese High School. Okay, established by Tan Kah Kee. Right, Tan Kah Kee. Does anyone know what is the name of Chinese high school today? What is Chinese high school name today? But today it is known as something else. What is the name?
Is it Hwa Institution?
Yeah, correct. Hwa Chong Institution. Have you heard of the school Hwa Chong? Hwa Chong, have you heard of the school? Yeah. So today Hwa Chong's old name is Chinese High School. Right? It was set up by a rich migrant called Tan Kaki. Okay, why did this man have to contribute money? Because the British they did not support schools that didn't teach English, right? So it's up to the migrants. If they want a Chinese school, they need to set it up themselves, right? There were also Christian missionaries who came to Singapore. Christian missionaries are people who spread the Christian religion. They came to the Singapore island to spread Christianity, right? But they also contributed money to build schools as well. That is why you see schools today are like CHIJ. Okay, CHIJ is set up by Christian missionary. Okay, can anyone tell me other schools that you think is set up by Christian missionaries? Yes, Brendan. St. Gabriel's, yes, of course. As long as it's got the word saint there, saint something, is most likely set up by Christian missionary already.
Joseph.
St. Joseph. St. Joseph is my school. Right? When I was secondary school, I was in St. Joseph. Right?
My brother's school.
It's your brother's school?
Yeah, my school St. Gabe.
You are in St. Gabe's?
Yeah.
Right. Then got St. Andrew's, right? St. Anthony's, right? So many Christian missionary schools, right? Okay. So the Christian missionaries also contributed money to set up schools in Singapore, right? So if you go and look at the history of these schools, right, many of these schools are set up in Singapore. The starting year is like 1800s. This is when Singapore became a British colony around that period, right? Okay. And so this means overall there is more schools in Singapore, but the quality of education was still very poor, right? And it's not as good as today lah. Today's our Singapore's education is high quality, right? But then last time, although there were more schools, right, after Singapore became a crown colony, there were more schools, but the quality is still not that so good. So we learned about education already. Now let's move on in the notes. Now let's look at healthcare. Okay, healthcare. Right, this is all your doctor, your hospital, your clinic. Okay, so again, we're going to look at the time period, the EIC time period first, right? The 1819 to 1867, EIC. Okay, the East India Company period. Okay. During this period, like I said, the EIC didn't have much money, right? The EIC was struggling. They didn't have much money to give Singapore to help them develop. So that's why in Singapore did not have many medical services. There was not enough doctors. There's not enough nurses in Singapore. All right. During this period, the first period. Okay. There were maybe one doctor or two doctors on the island, but they were usually meant for the British people or meant for soldiers or whoever is rich enough to visit this kind of doctor. All right. Most people in Singapore cannot afford to go and see a doctor. Okay. They cannot. Right. They cannot afford the doctor's fee and the medicine. Right. So what they did is that they went to see their own village healer, those traditional medicine. All right. Go and see those traditional medicine healer in the village. All right. So that's what they will do. But generally, many people will fall sick, right? From not enough food, overcrowding, very dirty place, right? There was a lot of people dying in Singapore because of illness, right? They cannot receive proper medical attention quick enough, right? So many people will be dying in Singapore because of health issues. Okay. And then you see there was also malaria. Malaria is spread by mosquito, right? There's many mosquito problems in Singapore, right? And you can see these guys trying to spray chemicals into the forest to kill the mosquitoes, right? This disease was very common in Singapore, right? So many issues in Singapore when it comes to health. But things change when Singapore becomes a crown colony. Okay, remember crown colony time? The British government gave a lot of money to Singapore to help them improve their country, right? So what happens when Singapore becomes a crown colony? Healthcare improved, public health department set up, malaria committee was set up to drain the swamps. Okay, you all know what is a swamp or not? Brendan, do you know what's a swamp? Are you filling in the blanks, Brendan? Public health department and malaria committee. Fill in first and answer my question. What is a swamp? What is a swamp? You see here, malaria committee set up to drain swamps. Swamp means what? Aiden, what do you think? What's a swamp? Where can you find swamps in Singapore?
Drains?
Drains, no, they're not drains. Yeah. Swamp is have you heard of mangrove swamp or not? Mangrove. Your geography never learn, sec 1. You're learning geography in school, not? Never learn about swamp, mangrove. Okay, mangrove is near the sea. Okay, it's around the coastal areas of Singapore. You can find them at Pasir Ris have. Pasir Ris have a swamp, right? Yeah, that Brandon is answering mangroves. And there are the water there is very stagnant. Right, the water there the swamps have water, but the water don't move. It's stagnant water. So mosquitoes like to lay their eggs there. Right. So what this malaria committee did was to set up a committee and to drain the swamps. That means to remove all the stagnant water. To kill all the mosquito eggs, right? They also improve the sewage system, clearing up the dirty streets. They improve housing to reduce overcrowding. They also built a new general hospital at Outram Road. It's called the New General Hospital. This is the photo of the new hospital. Can anyone tell me what is the hospital called today? This same hospital is still there. Of course, doesn't look like this now. It's much more modern now. But
Singapore General Hospital.
Ah, correct. Singapore General Hospital, SGH, one of the most famous hospital in Singapore. Everybody goes there, right? SGH, Singapore General Hospital. Last time is known as New General Hospital, built in 1882. Can you imagine how old it is, right? It's about 140 years, 145 years old around there, right? How old the hospital? Okay. Then they had the quarantine law also. This quarantine law passed in 1886 to prevent the spread of smallpox and cholera, to isolate arriving travelers for diseases. Fill in the blanks. Quarantine law. Do you all remember being all these quarantine things happening in Singapore a few years ago? Do you all remember? How old were y'all? Brandon, how old were you when COVID was happening? Sec 1, is it? Primary 1, is it? So fast, huh? Right not, huh, Brandon? Time has flown, huh? From primary 1, now you're Sec 1 already. It feels like yesterday, right? All these quarantine and COVID and all that, right? So my question to you now is, how will putting people in quarantine help to prevent the spread of diseases? Wow, that's a very high level example you're giving. Okay. All right. However, the death rate was still quite high. People still continued. Many people. Okay, fill in the blanks here quickly. All right. Possible reasons for this is that crowded living conditions. All right. Lack of understanding of diseases. Okay, just fill in the blanks quickly. All right. Okay. So, some problems still continue to remain, and this caused the death rate to be still higher than the birth rate. Right. Okay. Okay. Let's take a look at your stars so far. How are y'all doing? Interesting. All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next part. Port facilities. What's a port? A port is where the ships and boats come to unload all their items, either to unload or to load up. Like you see this. These are all boats. All these boats are filled with things. So you go to a port, right? You come nearby and then you can unload. You see this is like a port. Then you see this. You all see this carefully. See, this is their little wooden beams here. It's for the people, for the coolie to walk up and down, carry the things, and then go into put in the warehouse. Or from the warehouse, bring it into the boat. Right? Then from this boat, right, they would travel out to sea where there's a bigger ship there waiting for them. Then they will load it up, the big ship. Right? But because there were so many boats coming into Singapore, so many ships coming, because Singapore popular trading spot, right? There was a need for more space to store all these items. Right? And for coal, right, for dry docks to fix the ships, there was a need. The current port was too small. So the British actually spent money to improve the port. They first built a new port, a new harbour, right, called the Keppel Harbour. It's still there today, Keppel Harbour. This was a deep water port, suitable for big ships, protected from harsh winds. Okay. What else did they do? Oh wait, expansion of port facilities. Continue. Singapore Harbour Board was created, and their job was to upgrade all these, build new things, new docks, new wharves, storage places, machine workshops, build a lot of new things around the Keppel Harbour. Right. All these are meant for ships, all these wharves and docks and storage places, all meant for ships, okay, and their items. And then they had advanced equipment like forklifts, cranes, right, introduced for efficient loading and unloading. Okay. Because there's so many trading ships coming, right? So you cannot depend on coolies all the time. So they brought in machines to help unload and load up the ship. This is a crane. Have you ever noticed this before along the harbour? You all drive past Keppel Harbour, you all can see it. Have you ever noticed this look like giraffe one? Brandon, have you seen it before?
Yeah, but then I just see a lot more and they're all green.
What?
Like
Green. Some are green, some are yellow.
of it, but then most of them are green.
Yeah, look at that. Some have the heads up, but this one has a head down. Okay, this one is flat. When it's flat, right, means it's helping to carry things from the ship and then putting it onto the ground, right?
I'm just wondering how they like get the oil from oil ships.
Use a pipe, use a pipe. What else did the British do? They built a railway system, connect Malaysia today, to Singapore. All right. The railway will bring products from Malaysia to Singapore to sell at the port, to export it to other countries from Singapore's port. All right. Singapore had a good port, but Malaya had all the items and resources. So they'll bring all the resources from Malaya into Singapore, then load it up in the ship, and then export it to other countries, sell it to other countries. All right. So there's some boosted trade at Singapore's port. Okay, then a causeway was also built. I think today everybody knows this causeway, Woodlands Causeway. Right, this is actually helped to build trade, right? Connect Singapore and Malaysia so that traders can cut across, can drive across also, right? Okay, so got railway and then got causeway, right? Everything connect Malaysia and Singapore to boost the trade. Okay, students. Here's an old picture, causeway.
I'm pretty sure water is also transported from Malaysia to Singapore.
Yeah, you there? Look at that. All these white things. Can you see the white things at the side? These are actually water pipes. It's bringing water into Singapore.